welcome back to Conversations with Cathy. My guest today is Anna Clark, author of The Poison City. And we're going to jump back into our conversation, Anna. So how do things stand in Flint right now? What are the effects of, all the things that have happened since the water crisis came to national attention? Tell us about that.
Good question. We're almost at the 5-year anniversary of this now infamous water switch. I know, remarkable, right? I mean, in April. And, much less that it's been actually acknowledged and taken seriously. But there is a lot of things going on. And the first thing I want to say is that, a lot of times when we talk about Flint, we talk about what the city has lost, over decades, just, industry and jobs and population, public services. I just want to just first state that, that there's a lot that is there that we don't talk about a lot, and it's a really wonderful place. And I really like Flint. It's got a wonderful library. It really does. They're fabulous, and they're right in the beautiful cultural center, the art museum, the largest planetarium in the state. They're home to 4 colleges and a county government. They have 100,000 people there, which is still really, as much as it's lost population, it's still one of the larger cities in the state. And I really love the city. It's like having a chance to spend a lot of time there and meet people there and explore it has been a great gift just in my life, but also given me a lot of hope for its future, because I can see why people love it and want to be there. And it's got good bones. So some of the things that have been going on in the wake of the water crisis in particular, one is because of a class action settlement, all its pipes are being replaced. That is great news. It's also still in process, so that's one of the reasons why people, still say that the water crisis isn't over, for example. Because it won't be done for a year-ish or more. But yeah, so this infrastructure that got so corroded and damaged by the mismanaged water in the city, it didn't magically get fixed just because new and better treated water is passing through. This is one of the reasons why, even though they switched back to the Detroit water system, which is properly treated, the pipes were so broken down, and many of them were made out of lead and were just toxic. So that's in process right now. There's also been a lot of initiatives to try to meet the health and education needs of folks in the city. Lead poisoning is really serious. It stays with people forever. That's why it's such a big problem. It gets little kids with developing bodies are especially vulnerable to it, and to a certain extent, we're not going to know the true toll of the water crisis until we see them grow up and see what happened, because you don't know. But it stays in you, it gets in your bones, and it can have a number of developmental effects. And to try to mitigate a lot of that, and to meet other services besides, there's been, for example, a new EduCare program that opened there, brand new building, and probably the first new school built in Flint in just 2 generations. It's designed for children ages 0 through 6, so it's kind of a expanded universal preschool daycare model. It's really cool, and they offer wraparound social services. They've got a lot of health and good nutrition things, because that can be very helpful to mitigate the effects of lead. That's a really positive thing.
How has that been funded? Because I wonder if the National Spotlight has helped to bring some perhaps corporate dollars or philanthropic dollars to Flint. Has anybody really stepped up?
Yeah. There has been a number of different streams. There could and should be more transparency and clarity about where a lot of that went and how and why in the state. There's this tricky space of where a lot of folks in Flint feel a little frustrated that the very agencies that caused and prolonged the crisis at the state are the ones who are gathering a lot of that money to implement the recovery efforts. And even if they're doing it perfectly well and beautifully, you can't blame residents in the city for being a little
the trust has been
the trust
eroded, to say the least. Right?
Exactly. So it's they're the ones who the people who cause and prolong the problem are the ones who are fixing the problem, and it's just that's tricky. But there has been a number of like philanthropy dollars and some other things that have been going on. that make possible things like the EduCare thing. There was also an expanded Medicaid program, so for anyone who was like exposed to the water in Flint, not just residents, like commuters, other folks who, people who were university students in the city who lived outside it, and that met a lot of needs that went well beyond even the water crisis in general. But some of the challenges besides the ongoing effort to replace the pipes, the long-running legal process that is not over yet with a number of criminal charges and civil lawsuits and things like that, those are still unsettled. And and there's also that sort of like larger toll of like for residents for whom this was the last straw and left, it wasn't that easy to sell a house in the city, even a beautiful, well-kept, historic house. Like, it wasn't that easy to sell it 5 years ago, and it's certainly not easier now, even with a brand new pipe that, that's no longer made of lead. I mean, enrollments, like I've heard, is down at a lot of the colleges. I mean, I think there's like some consequences that are hard to pin down but are very real
and long
for this.
Too,
yeah.
Too. Well, because it's an image crisis.
Yeah.
Too.
Right.
It's really unfortunate.
And it's really frustrating because there's people who have been working really, really hard, to build a beautiful future for this city and help people, give people who haven't been downtown or to some of the neighborhoods a reason to come there. There's this wonderful bookstore that opened called Totem Books, which I'm just going to shout out to your library audience. I mean, they sell books, new and used. It's like a little lunch counter thing. They're a little bit off from downtown. It's a fantastic space, lots of things. And if you're a new business owner that like invested in the city and really want to create wonderful community spaces, like this is just like one other problem that you don't want to be dealing with, right? It's just you can make sure that the water you have is safe in your business, but there's this like larger narrative issue that that people are going to be dealing with for a long time. And there is a lot that's beautiful there. I hope folks, if they haven't been to Flint in a while, just go check it out, because I think there's a lot that's genuinely wonderful there that I don't want to get lost in the midst of the narrative of the water crisis, even though there's a lot of very real consequences that community organizers and residents are still working on every day.
The community seems to have such a great spirit, and I'm not quite sure the word for it, but even in the introduction, I have to tell you, it hooked me because you talked about how, Flint was disadvantaged economically and kind of depressed, but then the pastor and the church, and they came together and they started doing really cool things for the city, and as they started doing things for the city, more people got on board, and the city was starting to, just show the benefits of the community involvement. And then came the water crisis. So their resilience, I think, is impressive and admirable and inspiring. And I feel like they're there again, in that situation. And I'm hopeful that they won't have to endure another.
Me too. Me too. Like, if there's, nobody should have to deal with this, but I feel like it has spurred. Some opportunities and ingenuity that I think is a powerful blueprint in Flint that I think communities, all different kinds of communities, might learn something from. Like one thing I loved about that was happening in the Civic Park neighborhood in Flint. It's like one of America's first subdivisions. It's got a really interesting history. It's all these literally built 100 years ago this year by General Motors for workers and their families, cute little boulevards and stuff. It was very segregated, as everything was in Flint at the time. And now in the bones of this neighborhood, this community is really like just imagining like a whole other way to support themselves, and it's exciting and beautiful, and like they're turning like vacant homes into like repurposing them to meet different community needs. Like one house is like the health house, and another house, isn't this cool?
Yeah.
And like the other house is like, they have like a vacant lot, it's like, urban farming, and a vacant house next door is supposed to be the agriculture house, and people inside can like learn canning and things like that.
Wow.
Isn't it great? It's like, it's great. And then they're able to do this because they're like, they're of that community, like they're within this community. They're like they're close to, they've built their trust and credibility. They can hear what people's needs are, and they really have this like all are welcome spirit, no matter that comes out of that pastor's religion, really like come out this all are welcome spirit, no matter what baggage people are bringing and the hard needs and complicated stuff. They were delivering water to like homebound people in the neighborhood well before the state or the federal government were acknowledging that was something that needed to be done, even before it was clear what was going on, because they just knew that people weren't trusting it, and they also knew that people needed water, and so they were like activating, And
somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it, and for a lot of us, in other parts of the country, like. What relationship do we have with our neighborhood? Like, what can we imagine? Like, can we imagine our neighborhoods to look to meet our very particular needs in this way, and really like get outside the box and visionary with finding new uses for old spaces? And how do we turn the hardship of the past into something beautiful? I feel like there's a lot that Flint has to teach those of us who live elsewhere. Not just for their ability to like endure a disaster like this, but for their agency in cultivating true brilliance in supporting each other and their community.
And no, this is probably just such a soupy analogy, but like a phoenix rising out of the ashes.
Yeah.
That's really
No, that's funny. That's when Flint they renamed. They have a hockey team and a minor league hockey team, and they were taking suggestions for names. They ended up going with Flint Firebirds.
Oh yeah.
Partly with that same kind of spirit.
Oh good.
So you're right on the money.
Good. Well, I am sorry to say we're coming to the end of our time, but I have one last question for you. So what's next?
What is next?
How do you top this?
Well, I have to. This came out last summer, and I think, if I'm completely honest with you, like what was next was sleeping. Like I was drained. I was absolutely spent. I love writing, but doing more writing sounded like the hardest thing in the world. Now I'm, like I do appreciate the opportunity to keep telling the story in different ways and keep following what's going on in Flint. More continues to happen every single day in the community and with the water story. So as a writer and as a citizen, like that's something I mean to keep following. And also, I'm beginning to feel myself ready for like a new project to kind of move further on. I'm beginning to feel that. I don't know what the story is yet, and I've learned to not, knowing how much it takes, I'm not going to jump, but I'm looking and searching and trying to keep that curiosity and empathy with me to help find how I can contribute to it. Another true story in another community.
Oh, I can't wait to see what you do
Thank
next.
you.
Very, very, very exciting, and so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to me.
This is an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, well, that wraps up another edition of Conversations with Cathy. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.